So yeah, the plan is to essentially change our Initramfs to have it upstart rather than the current shell script. There's quite a few advantages in doing that. One of which is that we can start Plymouth or Wayland or whatever we're going to do much earlier, so that the user gets feedback as soon as we can provide it. Some of the work's already been done. Essentially, there are a couple of branches, one for Upstart, one for Initramfs tools. It works. I think we plan to go ahead and do this, but I mean, what are people's views?
Oh, I think you're.
Oh, sorry.
Why does it allow us to start Wayland earlier? We start init.
The current
now in the Initramfs if we need to.
So the current Initramfs tools is just, it's very, it's a shell script. Just run, and they run the whole of other scripts sequentially.
So right now we do a full unit intro before we start Plymouth at all, whereas this would allow us to start Plymouth as soon as the particular stage of the unit finishes.
The other thing as well is right now, the way Plymouth deciding that Initramfs is a shell script, it writes the PID of Plymouth out to a particular file with a particular magic name, which Upstart is hacked, where if things exist with that particular magic name, then it pretends like it started them and assigns the PID into a state. This would actually allow you to do effectively copy the Plymouth init config into the Initramfs and just have Plymouth started as if it was, and actually have the state transfer to it. It would blur the line between Initramfs and the whole system.
Which is probably good.
I mean, it's going to require us to change Upstart to allow us to actually pass state, which is not an insignificant piece of work, but it's doable. So this might end up being a short session, I don't know. We're halfway there already. So yeah, it would give us a more flexible Initramfs. It wouldn't preclude not having an Initramfs. You can still run the system without it. Why do we have a session?
Well, there are a few Upstart-related sessions already. So for me, I care about crypt devices, LVM devices, RAIDs, and how to map them properly based on events as soon as, because once you unlocked encrypted, you get more devices and you don't necessarily know where exactly your root fs is, and we have a few reliable RAID topics and bugs which relate to if we had event-driven Initramfs, then we would be able to mount the file systems and construct RAIDs more reliably because we would have more information dynamically as it happens.
Yeah, and more to the point really, I mean the current design of Ubuntu means that the kernel boots and then the kernel switches control to a BusyBox-based operating system which is handwritten in shell and BusyBox and a few little C programs to bootstrap Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And thus, if you want to do RAID, for example, RAID LVM, crypto, encryption, or whatever else, you have to write all that code once for the BusyBox-based operating system, for the root file system case, but then you have to write that code completely differently for the Ubuntu system for user or var or whatever else might use that.
Yeah.
And you end up with two completely different things. The trouble is as well, the BusyBox-based operating system likes to run ahead and try and do everything it can, so you can end up with weird RAID conditions where the block device for, say, /user or /opt or whatever else is available when the Initramfs and the BusyBox-based OS is running. So that tries to mount it, but doesn't have the full configuration that Ubuntu has, so the two of them don't work. Whereas this is basically making the Initramfs actually Ubuntu-based, so you can just copy config from Ubuntu into the Initramfs and in theory use exactly the same code twice.
Now we just have the Upstart as bin init be in the Initramfs. Is that how it would work?
Yeah.
And then would we exec off of the root disk?
In theory, assuming the next session goes well.
Yeah, stateful re-exec is a precondition.
Yes.
Another thing that would be really cool is that I think that this would give us an opportunity to put some much better recovery mechanisms into the initrd. right now, anything goes wrong, either it hangs indefinitely or you get dropped to this like very, very unhelpful shell.
There
I
is a
disagree.
non-negligible
It's very
cost
helpful.
to making the initramfs large, especially on platforms with particularly slow firmware-driven I/O.
Yeah, because you have to load. So we actually did. I can get Jeff to work on. So there is actually an alternate libc implementation which you can use in the initramfs to make it small. Part of the problem, I remember Jeff and I in the very early days tried to, as much as possible, avoid using glibc in the initramfs to keep it small. But the problem there becomes as soon as you try and pull in, say, LVM, because LVM doesn't. Huh?
Then you've
You
got
end up with two libcs.
which we actually have already today.
Yes, well you do, because BusyBox is still compiled with the tiny one, right?
Yeah.
We've got
I actually,
we're actually using klibc utility.
someone should give me an enormous action item to fix that, because I was going to fix that like 6 years ago.
I looked at it and
That's what you meant
it's,
to.
I looked at it, it's not worth spending any effort on.
Yeah.
No?
Losing the small klibc doesn't save you enough space here where it's
All right.
going.
Fair enough.
You'll lose about 30K on those
Yeah.
UDS probably.
Okay.
It's tough.
Yeah,
The whole
and
point of
it's-
KLC is
we're not going to successfully go the other way where we only have klibc. So in fact, we shave off klibc and
Right,
klibc
sure.
is not worth doing.
Okay.
I know Jeff wanted to see if you could do a build of libc without all the translation efforts and stuff like that in it. See if it's more. That never went anywhere. Mostly because Jeff went places. So yeah, that was background. So in theory, I mean, the biggest cost of the initramfs size has always been the libc in it and the kernel modules in it. Everything else has tended to be negligible anyway. So in theory, a better recovery-driven thing. I mean, there's no reason you couldn't do better recovery in the current system. You just have to write it with BusyBox in mind and everything
Right,
else.
but
You
we
do
could
better-
probably actually like just drop friendly recovery wholesale into the initramfs and have it mostly work.
It's friendly recovery Ubuntu thing.
Yeah.
The Plymouth based thing.
I don't know if it's Plymouth based.
Friendly recovery. So
It's not.
No.
think it's
Friendly
new
recovery
based.
interacts with Plymouth, but it's like nuke driven or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Think about, yeah.
Speaking of Plymouth and the initramfs, I don't recall if I mentioned this to you in any detail, but one of my ideas was if we did have event-based initramfs, we could conceivably unconditionally put the video drivers in the initramfs, the KMS drivers, and have UDEV start trying to load those. And if we can get the event handling right, it doesn't actually have to successfully load it all the way before pivoting root.
Right.
But it lets us start the video load earlier, which buys us some time. It gets us a splash earlier, which is one of the biggest complaints right now, is that for many users, the video driver load takes as long as it does to mount the full file system. So it's actually, you're waiting on the video driver to get your boot splash, and by that point, light VM starts.
Yeah, so, I mean, the difficulty there, you obviously have a toss. You've got to toss all your state from one OS to the other. Some of that state's the upstart event queue. So, for example, upstart's collecting events from UDEV, from the system. There is a sort of a point at which you kind of just want to pause that queue, get upstart to re-exec itself, pivot to the real system, and then resume the queue on the real system, having loaded all the new config.
Right.
That's actually not really that much of a problem. But in the meantime, you've also got the UDEV queue, which is the queue of events coming from the kernel. Again, at some point, you might want to pause that queue,
Yes.
pivot to the real system, pivot to the real root, and then resume the queue, and then play all the events that happened in that middle time, which is slightly more interesting to do, because right now, the UDEV-D that runs in the initramfs is actually killed, and a new UDEV-D started from the real system.
That causes problems.
Is working now,
Huh?
which is working now after several iterations in 11.10.
Yeah, I think, but you actually, it's not that you replay those events dismissed, you actually just replay all the events in the
Right.
system. Yeah, it's the cost of, it was one of those things I think, the cost of just doing full UDEV ADM trigger in the real system was, I'd say, 1/10 of a second compared to pausing the events and then resuming them. So it wasn't a huge burden.
So I think at this point we're pretty happy with what we're doing with UDEV and are somewhat reluctant to change it
Yeah.
because it's working.
Yeah. At the point at which you start to look at 1/10 of a second's a good time.
Yeah. But like
Then we've already won.
so what I'm talking about here, that means it implies we would be beefing up the initramfs further because we would always put Plymouth in it and we would always put the KMS drivers in it.
Yeah.
and we would opportunistically load them from the initramfs. So there's a cost there in that the initramfs is now larger than it was, and I don't know what the penalty is for that, but I think it's worth investigating.
Yeah.
Do we know how much larger?
No, it's worth investigating. Well, substantially larger if you put Plymouth in, because Plymouth depends on Pango and font.
You must have that situation quite often at the moment for people with encrypted disks.
Yeah, anybody who has an encrypted disk has this already, and they find the boot experience nicer, slower but nicer.
What's Tango?
Tango,
Pango.
you need
Right.
font shaping. You get a full-
Yeah, no, I wasn't asking what Tango was. I was asking what Tango was. I thought given the orange related thing, it might be something Ubuntu
So,
specific.
I know that Chris Rogers has a plan to, like, replace the Plymouth front end with a different thing, which
Back.
may help there. Though we probably still need Pango.
Right. It doesn't help. At that point, what it means is you actually have to also put the Wayland server in the initramfs.
Yeah, I think you may have had a plan that only involved requiring one.
The other thing is what you know.
Doing what? Sorry, I haven't.
No, I think you may have had a plan that only required having one in there, but I guess that's probably
Anyone?
not actually true.
One what?
One of Wayland or it's like the Plymouth Splash stuff. But
No, we have to have both.
okay.
So, because his plan is that Plymouth will be running on top of Wayland in the KMS case, which means we have to have Wayland in the initramfs and start it.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes,
So-
you're right.
Right, so potentially there's a huge impact on the size, which would slow down loading of the initramfs.
So how large is Pango then?
My initramfs is 21 megs.
So I'm asking this question because we actually, the one place we do have an initramfs in cross is that is for our recovery path, and we don't use Plymouth, we use Plymouth Lite, but we actually found that it wasn't worth the size of putting the full Pango in there in response. We actually instead just generated bitmaps, all the text we wanted, and the whole thing came to a few hundred kilobytes, and it's all the languages we support. Because you have like half a dozen strings that you know you're going to prove, so you may as well just pre-generate, pre-render the text, because it's a bit mask that you're writing in whatever color you want. And those compress really well.
Okay, that's worth looking into. I'm not, we have to do some work to actually gather the strings and like make sure we're doing that. I do like the idea of not having the full font rendering library in there.
And it definitely is really easy. You render the bitmap horizontally and you just render it.
Yeah, I mean, that actually would help us fix a bug about the fact we don't have word wrap. So if we have long strings in a translation, it scrolls off the screen on
So if I uncompress my initRD, the whole uncompressed thing is 60 megs. The kernel modules are 40.
Yeah. That's
So we talked about this before. Why don't we generate a neat initramfs for the main boot image and a full one for the emergency one?
because you actually want to be able to fall back to the emergency one automatically. I mean, if the main system can pick up the emergency one and having failed to mount the root file system, you can then go and grab that emergency one from somewhere, note having failed to mount the root file system, and then unpack it and then try again with those modules, then that's what you want.
That's actually entirely scriptable with Pro 2. That's entirely scriptable with
Oh,
Pro 2.
yeah.
Already on boot failure, we are already doing different things.
So, I mean, that would, if you can do that, then yeah, I think that's a good idea. If you can,
We already know that.
We have a previous boot failed flag that it's I haven't successfully booted flag that grub sets when it starts, and if it's still there the next time it runs, it knows it didn't get to a full boot, so it can just automatically grab that other initramfs if it wants to.
Because you're saying that might be as much as 40 megs more, so 20 megs. That's got to be a significant percentage of the overall capacity. I mean, the argument against has always been your hard drive is no longer portable without you knowing you need to click on the second entry.
Yep.
which don't you? Also,
I think that's what we're doing. Let's note that down as an action to follow through on
Also-
investigating this. Obviously, it has very little to do with event-based stuff, but yeah, I think that's actually a good point, and I think we've got the infrastructure that we can do that.
What was that? Sorry?
Also-
So it's investigate generating a large and small initramfs with auto fallback on failed boot.
The other thing as well is once you get to the point where you're generating multiple initramfs for an image, you could fix a bug that's been assigned to Adam for 7.5 years.
Which one's that?
The generating initramfs with Vi and Nano and debugging tools.
Oh, really? Is that still assigned?
Yeah.
Sweet.
That sounds like a non-default user selectable configuration option rather than something we would put in our large one.
No, indeed. It was just amusing. I saw it the other day.
Pango keeps decreasing in size on
Yeah,
our
all the time.
No,
It raised. The last one
maybe
raised
1
it.
meg wiki, but you probably need to look at the modules that it loads that actually implement the font rendering, and you have the TTF fonts themselves, and free type, and font config, and a few other libraries that are dependencies. So
And,
there's a
like I think that this splash screen is also responsible for that.
yeah.
Perhaps we could just get the designers to draw some more of those really cute pictures that don't have any letters on them.
Don't see one.
Yeah, there's probably an image for SDB or something.
Attempting to unlock disk UUID equals.
Squealy.
What's the universal symbol for that?
Yeah. Do you code?
Yeah, we've got some text involved here.
in Unicode it is 2-3 characters, right?
So this idea of actually opportunistically loading the KMS driver from the Initramfs, and if it gets there, great. If it doesn't, we just happen to have killed the Initramfs, and will that work? So like, UDEV either does or doesn't manage to load the driver before it pivots root.
Right.
So the next time you start UDEV, either the video driver has been initialized,
Yes.
has never been attempted to load, or is in the middle of loading.
Right.
So if UDEV gets another add event, if the new UDEV gets the UDEV trigger event, will it do the right thing in all those cases?
Well, the module should either, I mean,
Yeah.
before
The module is either loaded or isn't.
ModPro finishes, it should be in the list of modules that exist.
I don't know that we're waiting for ModPro to finish.
I think
Are
we
we?
have to. I think we wait for the
Right,
way we
the
fix
current
the
behavior is
handoff.
that we are waiting.
We have
So-
to wait for it to, not to finish its initialization, but to finish being marked as being loaded. So
Right.
a second load should fail because it's already loaded.
Yeah, but what you might end up with in a situation, I mean, as far as I understand, the way you'd end up in a situation is maybe the first mod probe succeeded, the second mod probe succeeded, but the third mod probe of the dependency module hasn't yet been run. But, so you'd actually, you have a chain of modules, it's not just one module. Yeah, module causes devices to be created, causes more modules to load, causes more devices to be created.
Right,
So you may end up in a situation where 2 out of 3 of those have been done, in which case the UDEV in the main system would pick up the third one and load that one.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
You'd expect it to do the right thing.
Right. Well, ideally what we want is to be able to kill UDEV as fast as possible out of the Initramfs, or to leave it running and let it finish whatever. That's the handoff case that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the question comes, do you want to, I mean, I think right now the code in the Initramfs, I mean, I haven't looked at it for a couple of years, but the code in the Initramfs certainly works on the basis that it killed UDEV, then waited for all of the UDEV children to go.
The code has changed since the last time we looked at it based on some upstream behavior changes that resulted in some bugs. But, yeah.
But that was the idea. That the idea was you did at least wait for
Yes.
UDEV to finish processing of the events. You didn't kill one time UDEV in the middle
Right.
of processing events.
Because it needs to actually flush its queue, and there are some dependent events where
Yeah.
the one won't return until the child event has been processed. So we do wait for those.
I mean, the good thing is, if you're in a situation where that's happening, you could have KMS starting.
Yeah. And
It's
so
be a
KMS
good use of that time.
Right. And that's totally parallelizable with the I/O going on with the disk loading.
So you said something just then about,
No, in fact, it's pages as well.
I know, because is there things that we could be loading from, no, we would put this about that, no, ignore that.
So I think maybe I've derailed the discussion a little bit by focusing on the Plymouth thing, because I wonder if,
Well, that's one of the primary reasons to do this.
Well, it's very valuable because essentially the purpose of doing this is to make it possible for us to dump a whole load of stuff into an Initramfs to make it go, to make it look pretty. If you're doing that, understanding the consequences of that
Right.
wholesale addition is important.
right, but we could do that Plymouth bit potentially without doing without even touching the event-based Initramfs. So I think we should talk about what we need for the event-based Initramfs in more detail and like really pin that down. What are the concerns there? I mean, we need stateful re-exec.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do we?
Yes.
For this scenario, well, what
Yes.
happens? UDEV, Plymouth, are those the only two?
The whole point of doing event-based Initramfs at all is that you then stop worrying about it on an ongoing basis. So you take the hacks out that deal
Right.
with PIDs now.
But if that's we haven't sized how big that exec work is. I mean, let's just say, well, you know, we can't achieve the queue. What possible?
So from a simplest point of view, you want stateful re-exec. You want Upstart
Yeah.
to be able to re-exec itself and at least pass state to that new Upstart of what the previous one ran. You need pivot in Upstart, so
Yeah.
you need Upstart, because Upstart obviously needs to not just exec itself, because it will just run itself in the interface again.
Yeah.
It needs to actually pivot into an exec itself in a new route and then start. You're going to need something to clean up the initramfs after it's done, obviously, and some events, some event policy defining the toss, because the second Upstart won't emit a startup event if you do this right.
You said won't?
No, because it's a re-exec Upstart.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. You don't get a startup if you.
Well, I know you currently don't, but I'm wondering if you ought to.
Right. So this is what I mean. So
Okay,
this is what I mean. So there's a definition of policy of events. Do you want a startup? Do you want maybe what you actually want is the initramfs Upstart to emit a different event saying restart up, and then have the actual one actually start up. This.
I think that's better so we don't have to go shuffling around the
Yeah,
existing.
I think that's probably what I would do. Have pre-startup or something like initramfs as an event that the initramfs and the execs have something in the actual system, you know, something to indicate that it's about to do the pivot, which he actually blocks on, so you can clean up. You might want the events to closely match the existing initramfs tools events, for example, like pre-mount, mount, and so on.
That's a good point. Are we going to lose debuggability? I mean, people actually hate the initramfs. Break equals random text works really well.
That's actually really,
I guess we have to make sure that's part of the design and we make sure.
well, it's really easy to do because you can have a job in Upstart which says env break, so it receives the break verbal from the kernel. You would then say on $event pressure.
Okay. We should just make sure we still have that, because debugging things like that UDEV thing would have been impossible without.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd actually put down the with events, do you want to match the existing initramfs events?
I mean, potentially we can be doing a lot better with handling the break, because some of our cases that we had to fix this last cycle had to do with, we didn't know where the video was. But now we've got the KMS driver in there, and UDEV is still running in the background even when we break. Even if you don't have a shell at that point, even if you can't see the console at that point, UDEV will load the video driver for you and hopefully eventually give you a console.
Right. It does sound better.
A little bit handy, assuming the KMS is actually going to give you a console at the end in every case when you need to debug it.
Well, that's not the bug.
Interesting, when the point initramfs tools is designed predates Upstarts by about an hour. As in, Jeff and I were in the same room and he was doing initramfs tools and we were working on Upstart after that. So it'll work.
Wow.
The current implementation of initramfs tools, or the multiple inheritance shell implementation?
The multiple inheritance shell implementation.
Yeah.
It was in Montreal.
It's worth saying that the current branches reference on the blueprint, so we put together the design. The plan was originally, maybe we need to just discuss whether that's still appropriate, sort of phased introduction. So I believe you can either run up that minus U or minus UE. So minus U would give you the existing shell in it. And sort of scripts and things, but if you specify minus E for event, you've got the initramfs with Upstart. So you can essentially toggle. You could, even if you wanted, you could have multiple entries on your graph boot. So which version of initramfs you wanted to select. Maybe that's only appropriate for development. But regardless, the existing implementation of Serbies, essentially the Upstart jobs mirror the initramfs tools structure. So you've got init top, init bottom, and so on, which hopefully gives some sort of familiarity to most folks.
Do we have any limits on how big initramfs can be and what we can put in it? Because, for example, our live CDs, they boot differently from the installed machine, and whether it's how to be booted the same way.
There used to be PowerPC side limits in the initramfs, didn't there, years ago?
I don't honestly recall.
Quite
I'd be concerned about as well some ARM platforms may or may not have some limits. And
because you have to load the initramfs via firmware. The firmware often has maximum sizes of load commands.
Yeah.
N pages or something.
Right. 2.5 meg on this one.
So those maximum sizes you can load.
2.5.
2.5 meg.
2.5. Okay.
It's not much.
So you won't be using this.
No, not on this device.
But there are people who have been asking for RAID and LVM and crypt on ARM. So
Yeah, but you wouldn't run that on this device.
not on that one. Okay, fair enough.
Well, the problem here is that it's originally developed for Android and uses an Android bootloader setup,
Right,
which
okay.
I can't override.
Sorry, I'm not clear on how we would determine whether that it's not legitimate to do this on that
That
device.
becomes somebody else's problem.
Right.
Well,
Don't worry.
That's what we have the failed for.
it's ARM anyway. You have to
Right.
compile a separate kernel per board, so you may as well
Yeah.
just skip the Initramfs entirely.
So, it is important that we preserve, that we do this incrementally. We introduce this as a non-default option initially, and that we work with it from there, and have it available that you can do something to enable event-based initramfs. I think rather than just a command line option, since there are things that call initramfs that call the update initramfs on your behalf, we probably need to have a global variable that you can stick in the config file in etc.
Yeah.
So that you can say, I'm opting into this and have it always do the right thing.
I mean, this is basically what initramfs.conf is for, right?
Yes, exactly.
There is an Etsy initramfs tools, initramfs.com.
It's an existing file we would add it to.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks. Sorry. Toggle traditional. Sorry, just going back to this ARM device though. What about the whole / user move?
Sorry, what?
The previous session where we can't. So we're saying if
You were in that session, weren't you? The discussion about merging /user and /.
So if you haven't got an initramfs, you have to have an initramfs, right?
Yeah.
If you have a user as a separate partition.
Right. So that wouldn't work. Maybe.
Do you care about this? Do you have the context for what we're talking about? This is
Yeah,
merging /user.
I just try to recall what
Okay.
we discussed
So
there.
you've got to have an initramfs.
Right.
So if it's too big, you're screwed.
Yeah, but I have to make sure the person building the images for these devices has to make sure to actually restrict the
But
initramfs
How
enough.
much? What is the hard disk space on
there? 8 gig. Yeah,
You will
8
never partition it and maybe partition.
you can't partition it
Oh.
because it's using an Android bootloader,
Right. Okay. So.
which overrides every partition table.
Sorry, what?
No.
But where should we be documenting this behaviour? You know.
As I said, this is the fact that there is a platform that has these specific requirements about not being able to update the initramfs is somebody else's problem. This is
Right.
not an Ubuntu system. It's an Ubuntu Android hybrid system.
Right, and it's a community image we are building
Okay,
here. It's
fine.
nothing we support officially. Don't worry.
Yeah,
And
I think in general, like even for ARM, like without this kind of devices, we're pretty safe. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have any kind of limit that way.
Yeah, the ARM devices we support usually don't have any limitation.
You mentioned before that you want to remove initramfs sometimes in some cases where possible.
Would love to.
Hmm?
Would love to.
Right. So, assuming that might happen, it's probably important that the design of this doesn't get you into a situation where if you don't have an initramfs, you no longer have the same events you had before. Because you just talked about having a different start event that's different from the event.
Right.
I mean, should you omit that or not omit that?
Right.
In
Well,
the case
so
where you don't have one.
the upstart that runs in root, I think this is another good reason to always make sure that what we have on startup is startup, and that we're doing other events in the initramfs, we call them something else, because it ensures that whether or not you have these early events, those are specific to the jobs that we put in the initramfs, which are going to be slightly different from what we have on the file system for various reasons.
Well, one of the stage advantages we could just copy the config from root into an initramfs and it will work. I think that flies slightly in the face of one of the founding statements.
Right. So there are very few things that actually start on startup. There are like 2.
Mountal and
Yeah. Most of the other things chain off of that. So Mountal
Hostname,
is virtual
module
file
edit
systems,
tools.
which triggers UDEV, which generates device events, which triggers a bunch of other stuff. So there's like a very small point where we actually have to change things to start differently in the initramfs, which will be isolated to 1 or 2 packages at the most. And then other things can just hook in the same way if they need to be in the initramfs and the root systems. Like Plymouth would not the Plymouth job would be the
Well,
same.
Yes, UDEF and mount all.
Yeah, it's UDEF and mount all, and there's something about the Linux tools, but I assume that it's triggering on other things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't, I think you'd have access to it with virtual file systems.
Well, hostname starts on tools as well, on startup.
Yeah,
Anyway.
close name, yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, I've stopped with Initramfs.
So what?
I've studied Initramfs, the virtual file system.
Yeah, it looks like you did things like not start on like startup and other stuff.
So,
So they only happen once, isn't it? That's how you make sure something's in it was twice. You have to give weight on startup and what it is you actually care about.
so I definitely think the scope for this cycle should be putting a proof of concept in the archive that you can opt into doing it. I think that's where it'd be good to get this cycle on. I don't think we probably want to do this by default, but I think we want to get something that people can play with and experiment with and see how it goes. There's no pressing need to do this by default in this cycle.
Or some of the other experimental features are coming, like Wayland, for example. I wonder if we might want to only do those in this. If that makes sense.
So, yeah,
So
sure.
rather
So
than
like,
have
have Wayland
for every
only,
one.
have Wayland and InitRamFS integration only done in the event-based system and not support InitRamFS tools shell-based.
Because we're assuming it's going to work.
Yeah. And it's,
I think that that seems like it has a lot of risk of forcing serialization of the document, and that I don't know that I think this will be ready by the time that Chris would want to start writing the Wayland integration.
Go write an entire compositor first.
That's fair.
yeah, the Wayland bits,
Something to think about.
yeah. I don't know. I think if we wait and see where we are when Wayland's actually ready, and when Wayland's in by default, then Evan, you and I get to deal with the fact that it breaks our InitRamFS handout.
Fortunately, you might not need to worry about that for a while. I think Wayland has been going to be the new default window manager 8.0 compositor for what, the last 4 years?
Yeah.
Well, but it was also explicitly not going to happen for.
I mean, it's actually roadmapped for this cycle. So,
It's been roadmapped since Lucid.
really?
Yeah. Yeah,
Alright.
it's been on Mark's things that would happen in this cycle since Lucid.
Oh, this is the best saying, yes, we're doing it. So,
It has a much better shot, I think, of happening this cycle than it has in the last few cycles.
I can see how totally gets.
it's time to show.
I similarly think that Upstart in the InitRamFS has been longer than that.
Sure, yeah. It has.
And stateful.
The difference is,
I wouldn't say Upstart in the InitRamFS is actually
it's when I see someone
Well,
actually
sure.
successfully running Firefox under Wayland, then I will start believing that it might happen.
Fair enough.
Chromium?
Huh?
Chromium?
Oh, we have Chrome running under Wayland.
But it got pulled. Okay. Okay, maybe not.
Yes, so Chromium started by Upstart in the InitRamFS. Got it, back on topic.
That's what's
I was going to say, that's what you're doing, right?
That's what we do.
Other concerns about this design? About do we need to talk in any detail about like the disk handling, which is the primary driver for why it matters? This is where things are somewhat shaky right now in the InitRamFS with the RAID and LVM and all the multiple layers.
So the theory was that by doing an event-based InitRamFS, you could use Mountal's code in both the InitRamFS and outside the InitRamFS.
Yes. And are there any concerns about that? Like anything we haven't thought of?
You're going to get into a situation where it mounts everything.
It's fine, it can.
Well, it's not fine as it comes to them, as in before.
But we won't wait for Mountal, is the thing. We will wait for, actually, in fact, no, it's not fine. Yeah. Mountal is going to, as soon as we've got the file system mounted, Mountal should die and get out of the way.
Yes.
So,
That doesn't sound very safe.
No, it's supposed to, that's the...
well, it's actually root, it's root and / user, in fact, now. So we make sure those two mount points are mounted, and then we should be calling Mountal in a way that
Yeah.
that it says, okay, I'm done, and that's the signal to upstart and quit it.
Yeah, and that was always intended in Mental's design, that at least it should support that. I don't think there's a flag in there to do that, but it was always intended that you would just run mount all to mount slash and then let it exit. Because it knows that the root file system's mounted, so you could play it out there rather than mount it at the other.
Stop and
So
start.
rather than stop mount all, it's mount all exits,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah,
event
you
causes
want-
upstart.
You want mount all to exit when the root file system's done. I mean, actually, in the end, I think the C program there's a wait for root C program in the Initramfs right now, which was just code copied out of Mantle.
Right. Okay.
So you made a face about the slash user thing.
I was wondering why you were doing that.
Because it's pointless to fight it.
So you're actually going to move stuff into slash user from bin.
I'm not going to do it on upgrades. Probably we'll do it on default installs. And
I was wondering if you were going to do that. That makes sense. It just didn't make sense if you weren't going to do that.
it's mostly just stop fighting with upstreams who don't care.
Hey, then you could then say that everything installed by default goes into user, but additional installs go into user local.
And alt.
Huh?
And alt.
Well, then you need to design a bad ridiculous for us.
So this should be a piece of cake, right?
It's one of those things, in theory, other than, in theory it depends on things which need to be done anyway, and once those things are done, is a lot of testing.
Actually, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Should we have some explicit work guidance around testing this?
Yes.
And by testing, I mean automated testing.
So QA needs some more guidance.
Automatic
No,
exception.
sorry.
That's right.
When you say clean up the Initramfs, isn't most of the state in var run, which get or slash run that gets copied across anyway, moved across anyway?
I didn't say anything about cleaning up the Initramfs.
It's on there as a
Oh,
concern.
yeah, that's one thing actually is probably worth putting on, as well as that you actually want to move mount points.
Right.
And you want, and that you'd write, you want to move proc, sys, dev,
Yeah.
dev PTS, dev ASSM, run.
Which
It's all together in its atomic
I mean, it seems that like,
this is stuff that Initramfs tools is doing today that has to be translated over to
Yeah.
the system.
Basically, there are a few things that Initramfs does init shell script actually does. One of the large bits is the pivot to move.
Do we need proprietary drivers for video graphics cards? Yes, no? Sorry.
I didn't hear.
Do we, to load the KMS into Initramfs, do we need proprietary graphic drivers as well? By
There are no
Yeah,
proprietary
show me
drivers
one
do
that has KMS.
In fact, by definition, there cannot be a proprietary driver to do KMS because the KMS API in the kernel is export GPL.
Oh, good.
Regardless, I mean, we do the same thing as far as when we pull video drivers into the Initramfs, it's all the same logic, it's existing logic, and
Right,
we either
okay, right.
load it or not, and give us something at the end.
Okay, as long as we have no regressions then.
Oh, we need to make sure we upgrade the Initramfs on Upstart upgrade. Regen.
Yeah, I think the depackage trigger enforces that for us automatically, maybe. Does it? Do we have a depackage trigger that when you update any Initramfs book, that it automatically regenerates?
Oh, a file trigger?
I don't know if it's a file trigger or if it's a,
I think it's a...
I think it's the other way around, if the
Okay.
packages trigger,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we could do an interest trigger.
I did ask for a trigger already.
yeah, we
in
don't
Initramfs.
currently, we don't currently, like, updated Initramfs has this great hack that sort of redirects
Yeah.
them to the triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could invert the way that works, but currently you just call update Initramfs.
Well, you couldn't entirely invert it. Because there are things that want to signal that you need to regenerate Initramfs that don't install.
Right,
books.
yes.
So you need both.
We could have both.
But yeah, that's. Are there any special requirements around NFS root?
With
Don't do it.
OPS.
Other than don't do it.
Well, Initramfs tool supports it today.
I know.
When we break it, users complain.
I know.
I mean, do
Users.
we,
Does anybody?
Users.
Does anybody in this room actually understand how NFS root works well enough in the Initramfs to speak to it? Maybe the answer is no, and maybe we have to go out and investigate it.
I know how it works in the Initramfs. I don't know how it'll work in the New World Order.
Well, we'll launch Network Manager, which will bring up your network
From
Hooray. These things are actually really aerodynamic.
Evident that.
I mean, more realistically, we would have to, if it was configured to do NFS root, we would also have to, in addition to pulling in the mount12 jobs, we'd also have to pull in the assorted Etsy init network star jobs.
I'm not sure that's actually true. Because we have specific network configuration that's done in the Initramfs.
Yeah.
Sure.
We want to bring that over rather than
Which is
trying
the
to
source, which is the source of error. iSCSI comes to mind as
Oh.
the disaster area.
Well, although if we have stateful re-exec, I suppose we should. Except.
Well, actually, stateful re-exec does help. The problem with iSCSI is making sure that nothing ever tears down the network, and actually the same problem with NFS root. So that nothing must ever tear down the network that your root file system is on.
Well,
Which
actually,
would
we have the
which would actually,
things
like-
try to restart iSCSI after boot, and that's the good thing.
So I said,
iSCSI itself, there were things that Stefan had to neuter to make them not restarted on boot.
there's that. I had to
I mean, I think,
perpetrate a gross hack around if I've done that lets us poke information into if I've done the brain.
well, but if as an alternative, we like just reuse the if up-down initialization logic within the Initramfs, that would possibly bypass some of that.
If we put if up and if down in the Initramfs, then there's an argument, and then copy the step over at the end, there's an argument about sacrificing things. I'm sure.
Well, we don't even need to copy it state over if we're just
If it's
pivoting
on
the
our
mount.
route, yeah.
So I think as a first pass, what we want to do is we should detect if we're doing NFS root, and if so, forcibly disable the event-based boot so that we can postpone dealing with this particular part of it. But as a stretch goal, if we get there, we can try to sort out the NFS specific stuff. I don't think we'll get there for this cycle, unless somebody's really keen to have it working for themselves.
I don't care deeply, but I don't think it'll actually be that much effort to
No.
sort out what breaks either.
I wonder if a cooler stretch goal would be getting Casper working with this.
I mean, what working?
Casper.
Casper.
I heard Casper.
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 Casper. Yes.
Casper does a great deal itself due to basically latency design.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that could happen a lot faster if it was upstart based.
Yeah, well, it has a good deal of going around in loops waiting for classes to appear. Even the UDF best would be an improvement.
Sure. I think there would probably be I don't think we would want to actually include this, but I think there would be a pretty significant benefit in terms of CD boot time.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of in the same category as NFS root, where if we don't get there, we just make sure we're not doing an event-based NFS for Casper case, but that we can look at that if there's time.
I don't know how much it's on it. Go by the other end. It's a while since I did anything for Casper.
Casper does a lot of
I think it was
forcible
pretty
serialization. That
yeah, I think it was still a pretty small fraction of the actual CD time, but I'm sure it would help.
I think he's worse. I think he's not very good at non-linear access.
well, that should be a problem. Well, no, that actually should be a
Right,
problem for
but
anything
it's
from the
only
internet. That's right.
Setting things up with something like
Yeah, sure. That's correct.
Why do we need stateful re-exec if we're going to rebuild the Initramfs with up-to-date pieces when we install them?
it's not quite what's in the Initramfs template file set. It's making sure that the state of
Jobs
the
that are already started.
running jobs is transferred over afterwards.
Right, why do we need to kill it at all? What was wrong with the old one that was wrong?
Oh, you mean why can't we just run the old upstart binary because it's got stuff mounted out of the Initramfs?
Because it's got stuff mounted in the Initramfs file system, its root directories inside the Initramfs, therefore it can't actually see the real file system.
They could true.
Both of those can be changed.
If it does a pivot root, that
It's holding open files from the Initramfs, which prevents the kernel from /sespin/upstart/lib/libc. All those files are held open in the Initramfs, thus using memory, which the kernel then will not clear up the Initramfs memory, because some pages from the Initramfs are in use.
It won't clean up any of it, so I think, so it won't clean up lib modules.
Exactly, it won't keep up any of it. Because the file as an exec outside of the root directory of the real system, you can't actually debug it to it. Obviously less of a problem for Init, but it's certainly a problem for UDEV, so you can't then get crash dumps from things run from the Initramfs that crash.
Those are all valid reasons you can stop.
No, we can't.
You stop listening. Just checking.
Is the set of Montel hacks that we have currently sufficient, or have we already gone over this?
As we've gone over, there are a few things that need to be extended. Mount all needs a mode where it needs to know about mounting slash and slash user, and then
Sure.
More extend.
What's the stuff about two libcs in the tab? Are we doing multi-arch?
When I was
Oh,
in
no,
KLC,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Burn.
Which actually, does KLC even drop out once we do this?
There's hardly anything left against KLC.
I think it's actually Initramfs tools bin itself,
Yeah.
which would go away, and
Pretty sure.
if BusyBox is an issue, we just use the other one.
Yeah.
This isn't an issue, it's against KLC.
So, there, it's free.
I think I tried to kill that at one point and then decided that it was only a tiny percentage
Exactly.
of the size of the modules.
So like, I've also looked at whether we should do mklibs on the Initramfs, and that doesn't make sense either because of the footprint it puts on the installed system.
And also the binary size, which is a significant portion of the size.
Yeah.
That's how I like it.
Who's working on it?
Yeah.
It's all you?
Okay. Well, no. Some as well, of course.
I'm happy to be assigned work items or help wherever needed, because
Okay.
I know this code really well. I know the Initramfs side really, really well, and not the Upstart side, so that's fine.
What's mount control?
That's a new command.
It's a thing Servi added to, it's a, I think it's the client side of the dbus interface to Montel, which does things like, I think it was a pivot, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can sort of set timers with different devices and so on, but it's entirely undocumented.
Let me actually
Okay.
It's, right, it's got stop a timer, so it was to make Montel's decisions about how long to wait for things.
I do think we actually, it should be a mount all option because it's it's not something where we want to start mount all in a usual mode and then tell it later to do something different.
There was a reason to change to a stop and restart timer. It wasn't to change how long it wasn't to change from a 60-second timeout to a 30-second timeout. It was to say,
Reset.
hang on until I'm busy doing some stuff, please don't time out on the middle of me.
Sure. For this specific bit, though, it should be an option to mount all, because it's, when we start mount all, we know we're asking it to let us know when it's mounted /and/user. When it's mounted in read only.
Sure.
So that specifically, it's a mount all option. Otherwise, your racy and mount all is going to waste your disk I/O doing other things you don't actually want to report to it. We actually talked, I don't remember where we talked about it. I think we talked about it in the /user session about the fact that mount all itself needs to make sure it recognizes after pivot that / and /user both need to be FS checked, since they've both been mounted from the Initramfs now, which is kind of tied into this, but not.
Doesn't that just work?
Mount all special cases the root file system, because it knows if it's been handed off mounted
Special
and
case,
files and FS checked.
But it does so good.
User has to be added to the special case.
Oh. I thought in general in the file system that it tracks one stuff and I need to check stuff as separate actions, and I didn't think that merely having the mind point there was sufficient to decide we needed to test stuff. But sure, let's check.
We need to follow through it, so make sure of that. Okay, I think we're at time.
Yep.
Questions?
If you want me to work on this, I'll need guidance.
I think all of us already
Will
touched
need
Initramfs code in our time.
I don't know.
So
Sure.
you should be able to get guidance from it.
Should I change my launch pad to use an
Something that can be typed.